everyone, and welcome to Africa Fire Mission's weekly virtual training session. My name is Mike, and I'm the programs director here at Africa Fire Mission. So happy that you took time out of your busy schedules to join us for today's virtual training program. Today we're joined by Chief Brad Banz. He's been in the fire service since they invented it, and he's been teaching folks in Africa for almost as long. So we're happy to have him back here with us again. Going to be talking about some hazardous materials today. Before we get started, just a couple of administrative items. If you stick around for at least 70% of today's training, which is usually about 40 or 45 minutes, I get you a certificate of attendance for today's class. The name on that certificate is going to be your screen name here in Zoom. So if you need to make any adjustments to that, please do so now. That's how it's going to show up on your certificate. If you can't stick around for enough time to meet that, there is another option. If you go to www.africafiremission.org, go to the resources section, tons of free material there for you. But there's also a section about virtual training where you'll be able to find a recording of today's training, as well as all the other trainings that we've held so far this year. If you watch a recording of the training, answer a few questions about what you learned, I can get you a certificate of attendance for that as well. So be sure to check that out. When we get wrapped up at the top of the hour with our formal portion of the training, we'll move into a tea time where it's time you can ask questions about today's class or discuss anything else that may be on your mind. So I invite you to stick around for that if you've got the bundles available to do so. At this point in time, so without further ado, I'm going to pass things over to my good friend Brad to get us started with today's training. Take it away, Chief.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Glad to be here. It looks like we have a good group this morning. People from all over. I saw Kenya, Malawi, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait. So glad to have everybody. I'm glad that everybody joined in this morning, and hopefully we will have a good presentation. So today kind of for where I'm from today, kind of marks an important day in our seasons around here. We had our first freeze, so it's sitting at about -2 here. So I know that's probably a little hard for some of you guys to fathom here because it doesn't get that cold in most of the areas where you guys are at. So our seasons are changing here in the U.S. and we're starting to transition over to winter. So anyway, so we're going to talk about HazMat Awareness today, and let me see if I can get that screen share up for you guys. Get my show up here. All right, everybody see it? We good, Mike? Okay. So talk about HazMat Awareness a little bit. So hazardous materials are everywhere, wherever we go, be that from things we use, transportation, manufacturing, anywhere that we might go, they're going to be around. And as long as they're where they should be, they're not hazardous. It's when they get loose, that's when we have a problem. So, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about, is the awareness portion and how to recognize them as first responders. That's something that we all need to know about. So that's what we're going to talk about this morning. Okay, so our objectives here this morning, we're going to learn how to define what a hazardous material is. Just go through some methods for identifying hazardous materials or a hazardous materials incident. Just real briefly introduce the U.S. DOT, the Department of Transportation Emergency Response Guide. I think a lot of you guys are probably familiar with it, but we'll just touch on it real quick and then define the initial actions if you run across a hazardous materials incident. Kind of some initial actions you guys can take. So move on down. So what is a hazardous material? Okay, this is kind of a what I would call a long-winded definition. This is our Department of Transportation's definition of a hazardous material. It's a substance or material that is capable of posing an unreasonable risk to human health, safety, or the environment when transported in commerce, used incorrectly, or not properly contained or stored. So in other words, as long as you're not doing something with it that you're supposed to with the chemical, it becomes a hazardous material. Okay. That's an easier way of defining it. So if it gets out of its container or you use it improperly, that's when it becomes a hazard. Okay. So let's go over some ways that we can recognize hazardous materials. Different places, different ways we can recognize, methods we can recognize. Occupancy and location, and we'll touch on all of these. We can recognize them through our senses, containers that they're in, different types of packaging that they're in. Different types of transportation by the placarding and labeling, and by shipping manifests. Okay. We talk about occupancy and location. Okay, where are different places that they might be at? In factories, manufacturing plants. Like here, I got a picture of a steel mill. At steel mill, you might see different acids, things like that are used to treat metal with. Okay. For different types of processes, you're going to see different types of chemicals. Okay. So for different types of factories, there's going to be what I would call name recognition as well. So you guys know in your different countries, a lot of times what those companies are going to do. Okay. So that would give you a clue as to what type of chemicals they might have in their facilities. So that's going to be one way of being able to recognize what they might have in their plant. Okay. So factories and manufacturing plants. Manufacturing plant might be like where they make cars, where a factory might be where they would make chemicals or something like that. So that might be a difference way to differentiate that. Warehouses, okay, down here where I have my arrow down here. Warehouses can store anything. Now I put a picture up here that kind of makes it easy to point out because I have a bunch of drums in here. Warehouses can have mixed contents. And you might not know what's in a warehouse. Okay. Some warehouses are going to be storage for a particular, like a factory or a manufacturing plant. So that's going to be pretty easy to pick out what's going to be in there. Some warehouses store everything. They're just going to be like what I would call a general warehouse. They store stuff for everybody. So you're not going to know what's in a warehouse. That's where you have to be really, really careful. But if you get called to a call at a warehouse, a spill at a warehouse, could be anything, or even a fire for firefighters. You get called to a fire at a warehouse, be really, really careful because you could have some type of hazardous material involved. Okay. Agriculture. Okay. You have pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers all involved with agriculture. Okay. And you could get, if we have any EMS people, you could get called to a man down. Okay. And it could be because they were spraying chemicals. Okay. Transportation. Okay. Everybody knows about transportation. So it could be anything in transportation. And it could be at like loading facilities or in transportation itself. Okay. In different forms, like I showed a intermodal container, could be a rail car, it could be a tank car, any mode of transportation. Okay, water treatment, that's another one. Some places are going to be more inclined to have this than others. If you go into a water treatment facility, you're likely to see chlorine. You see cylinders like this, it's chlorine. Could have a chlorine leak. Okay, through your senses. That's a big one. Okay, these guys are doing it right. They're looking, they're using their binoculars to look and see if there's something. Okay, using their sight. Okay, hearing. If you hear some kind of a noise, could be vapor releasing through a valve, something like that. That's a clue. Smell, if you smell something, it could indicate that there's a leak. Okay, if you smell it, you're on the wrong side of it. You need to get away. Okay. Okay, touch. Try not to touch anything. Okay, there again, sight for this picture right here. Seeing something spilled on the water there. Plus, if you're seeing dead fish, I see dead vegetation, something like that. It's all clues. Okay, and don't taste it. Don't taste it. Okay. So let's move on to containers. That's another clue. Okay. Different kinds of containers will tell you that there might be hazardous materials stored in them. Okay, you got this cone roof tank. Could be something as harmless as water. There could be like what do I want to say? Pesticides, something like that stored in them. Usually not going to be, if it's, shouldn't be any type of flammable stored in anything like this. But you know, there could be some type of a chemical stored in here. You get on over here to the closed floating roof tanks. You'll see the vent. There may be some type of a vent on here. Inside, there's a floating roof. The reason there's a floating roof That's to keep vapor down. Right across from my house where I live at, we have an ethanol plant. They store ethanol in these type of tanks, and that, like I say, that keeps the vapor from building up in the empty space here. So usually that's going to be some type of a flammable that's in these types of tanks. Okay, anybody that is around an oil refinery? So we have some folks on here from that are from Kuwait, Saudi Arabia. I didn't pay any attention to see if we had anybody from Mombasa. There's a refinery down in Mombasa. You guys are going to have some tanks like this. Those are crude oil storage, these floating roof tanks. Okay, same thing. It's just that same thing as our closed floating roof. They're just open, but keeps the vapor down. You can see the level on this one right here as the level of the oil product goes down, the roof floats down with it. Okay. Going on down here. These spherical tanks, spherical storage. That's usually going to be LPG, some type of a liquefied petroleum gas. These high pressure tanks, that's going to be either liquefied petroleum gas or like we can around here in the Midwest of the US, we'll see like anhydrous ammonia stored in there as well. So it's going to be some kind of type of a liquefied compressed gas that you might see. The cryogenic tanks. You read that, it says nitrogen. You can see liquefied nitrogen, liquefied oxygen usually. These are common around hospitals or medical facilities. Okay, moving on. Transportation. Okay. So, hazardous materials. Probably 70 to 75% of our hazardous materials out there are going to be flammables. So a lot of what we see out there are going to be flammable liquids. Okay. So you're going to see a lot of these out on the road. So these are usually going to have like petrol, diesel. See a lot of these out here, LPG. You see the smaller diameter with a lot of reinforcement rings, the splash guard on top. That's an indication that that's going to be a corrosive, usually an acid. Then you have your intermodal containers. Those can carry anything. Absolutely anything. Try to look and see if there's any type of markings on there to indicate what might be in there. Markings, be it placards or even anything stenciled that might indicate. Okay, pipelines. My friends from Kenya, I know you guys have one pipeline company that carries petroleum products. So it could be petrol, fuel oil, jet fuel. Because said there again, my friends from they're in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. I don't know. Do we have anybody? I don't know if we have anybody on here from Nigeria. Sometimes we have some folks on here from Nigeria. So you guys are going to see pipeline usage as well. So You guys can see crude oil and products lines as well. If you guys see any type of natural gas transportation, you could see natural gas transportation over pipelines as well. So with pipelines, over here in the left-hand picture, you're going to have storage facilities. These types of tanks right here are probably going to be, if I had to guess, probably the closed roof floating tanks, products lines. Okay. Shipping manifests. That's another thing you want to look for. If you have a transportation incident, you want to go try, if you can, to make contact with the driver and see if they have a transportation manifest. That's going to give you a lot of valuable information as far as what's in that vehicle. It's going to give you the name of the company that's shipping it, their contact number right there, their telephone number, the shipper, okay, where it's going to, and their phone number right there. Most importantly, products right there that are on board and how much. So says number of containers, 1. DM stands for drum. Total quantity, 159. That's a lot of drums. Or one type drum, 159. So I'm assuming that's probably, because this was made in the US, 159. Weight or volume, okay. I'm gonna say probably kilos. And 4 drums, 901 kilos. And it gives a UN number. So you have something to reference it to. Okay. Finally, placards and labels. How many of you guys know your DOT hazard classes? It's important to learn that. Okay. Class 1's explosives. 2's gases of all forms. 3's flammable liquids. 4, flammable solids. 5's oxidizers. 6 toxics. 7's radioactives. 8's corrosives, and 9's miscellaneous. Okay. Important for you guys to recognize these. Okay. Moving on down. Talk a little bit about the emergency response guide. That's a fairly popular publication. Not going to cover it because you could do a big lesson on just the ERG. I want to talk about a little bit though, and how you can access it. They make an app for it for your phones and for your laptops, and just to access online. If you guys want to take a look, I'll give you some time to write it down online. It's www.phmsa.gov/hazmat/training. Okay. For those of you that have Android, For those of you guys that have Androids, you can go into the Play Store, Google Play Store, CRG for Android. And for the iPhones, it's ERG for iOS. Okay, so the information that you can get out of there, you can look up product guidelines, and you can do it by the placards that we went over on the last chart here. On there, you can look up information. If you see something like this on the side of a container, you can look up and get information on what to do by the picture on those placards. If you have a product name, you can reference it to that product name, that UN number. So we'll go back, like if you have that UN number off of the shipping manifest or off the side of a container, you can reference it to that. Or if you have a container type. So if you have you can look at a picture. They have pictures of these different types of containers in there. And you can cross-reference it, and it'll tell you what to do based on that type of a picture, okay? And it gives you all types of response information. Gives you isolation distance, evacuation distances. Okay. So let's cover some initial actions that, as first responders, if we recognize that we have a hazardous materials incident, first thing that we should always do is try to stay uphill and upwind. Okay. So if we're not there already, we want to get ourselves there. Okay. Get ourselves there. Hope you guys like my my picture of a fire apparatus that I put together there. But if you're not uphill and upwind already, get yourselves there. Okay. Like I said, if you can smell it, you're on the wrong side. Said that just a little earlier. Okay. You want to isolate the perimeter. Using that information that's in that DOT guide. Isolate that perimeter around whatever is spilled. Okay. And then start calling for other agencies. If you don't have the appropriate PPE and other equipment that you need to mitigate that incident, start calling for help. And it may be way too big for you to handle on your own anyway. So you may need to notify other agencies and get things, get other agencies started. There may be patients. If you're firefighters, you may need to call ambulances. You may need help from the police to secure that perimeter. So you may need lots of help with other things anyway. So that's why you need to notify other agencies. Okay. The isolation perimeter. Okay. You need to get that crowd line around that perimeter. So I've been to Kenya enough. People love to come to an incident, don't they? So that's why you need to get that crowd line thrown up and isolate that perimeter. So use your physical clues and that DOT guide to help set that perimeter. Okay. Number one, if you can smell it, that's one clue that you're probably too close. Okay. Just common sense. We'll go back here too. Notice see how the wind is? See how I stretched that circle further downwind? That's what I was talking about, being able to smell it. So that's what I'm talking about as far as using physical clues and the DOT guide. That's going to help you set that perimeter. Okay. Move it as necessary. If you think that incident's getting bigger, move that perimeter, make it bigger. Okay. And use other agencies as needed. Okay. See how these guys have the police out there? The police are out there helping them secure the scene. Use other agencies as necessary. Okay. Okay. Evacuation. Okay. You guys may need to clear that scene out in a hurry. You may need to start clearing homes, businesses, or even if it's a spill inside of a building, you may need to clear that out. Okay. So a limited evacuation, say if you have a building on fire, you're going to have to clear that building out, right? If you have a spill inside of a building, you may need to clear some rooms out inside that building, a school, whatever. If you have explosives or reactive substances, definitely need to clear out an area inside the building. Or if you have what we call a sick building, you have people that are sick inside the building. You need to clear that building out. Okay. Full-scale evacuation. If you have a larger spill, you're going to probably have to clear that perimeter, get some folks out downwind, kind of follow the guidelines in your DOT guide. Larger quantities, especially materials that are going to explode. There again, follow the DOT guide. The DOT guidebook, it will give you evacuation distances for a large spill and a small spill. So that's very helpful. Okay. If you have a release that's difficult to control, okay, and you're forecasting that it could get bigger, definitely you want to do a full-scale evacuation. And if the public's at risk, full scale. Okay. And I am a little bit early. Got done a lot quicker than what I thought. You guys have any questions on anything? Guys have any stories about anything, any experiences with any hazardous materials incidents that you would you'd like to share?
You guys can answer or ask questions, answer questions using the chat. You can use the raise hand feature, or you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
So how many of you guys are familiar with the ERG? So I have Doris up there. Nope, they've muted. Any questions? Comments?
Yes, hello. Hello, Mike. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
This is Barnabas from Uganda.
Welcome.
I just want to ask a question that is not really common. A plane crash incident recently happened, but I saw like everyone was in a frenzy. What's the most appropriate way to respond to a plane crash situation? Thank you.
Plane crash? You're going to want to secure the area. There again, that's be comparable to hazardous material incident. You're going to want to secure the area, keep everybody out. You're going to get your fire and your triage teams in to start checking patients, triaging patients. We actually did at the symposium, and saying you're from Uganda, so you weren't a part of it, but several years ago at our symposium, we did a disaster drill on a plane crash incident at JKIA. But that's what we did. Like I say, we secured the area, and sent triage teams in to start triaging patients. And obviously, you'd want to make sure that there were no hazardous materials or nothing that's a threat to the EMS crews. Depending upon how badly the airplane was damaged, you'd want to check to make sure that the power was secured, the fuel was secured on the airplane, but that was all shut off. That would be a concern.
Hi, Chief. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, how are you? Just the crash, the plane crash, would it be in the aerodrome or outside?
That was where was the plane crash at? Depends on where it's at.
I'm talking about a situation where the plane crashes in a remote area, like in
Remote
the
area. So if
the
it was
hills.
down in the mountains, it'd probably be scattered out, right?
Yes.
So you're probably it'd probably be more of a catastrophic incident then. So in that case, it'd probably be more of a recovery, more than likely. So you'd still want to make sure that everything was secure. You still want to check for patients and that type of thing. And obviously, you'd still want to make sure that you didn't have any fuel leakage or anything like that. But whereas on an airport, you're going to be that's more of a concern, because you're going to have probably a fully loaded airplane, fully loaded with fuel. So you're going to want to may have to worry about fighting a fuel fire, getting those engines shut down and that fuel secured, throttle secured on there. So, yes, that's probably my best answer on that. And it depends on what type of a fire and how badly the aircraft's damaged and stuff too. So a lot of variables on that one. A lot of variables. So
Hey, Brad, can I add something to that?
Benson, yeah, you're the man. Benson's a good one to answer that one.
So, Mugabe, great question. So, I'm actually my specialty is airplane firefighting, and I actually just got off shift for that. In the last probably 2 years, been in about 2 to 3 actual crashes, and been involved in about probably 2 more. Overall, is in your context, if our plane crashes from altitude, in other words, height, the chances of life is zero, right? I'm not saying all the time, but it is zero. And so put yourself in your context where by the time we come to recovery, it's gonna be a few hours to a few days, right? So that said, I go back to my fire tactics idea, life safety, right? Incident stabilization and property conservation, right? So do we have any life safety? Is there a potential, be at the airport or be in the forest? Is there a potential for life? If there is life, then we're gonna risk a lot to save a lot, right? But also, once I say that, consider your also PPE, because you're dealing with either Jet A fuel, which is gonna burn really, really hot, and also you're dealing with avgas, which is avgas is like for those who speak Swahili, mafutayata, right? It's don't know how to call that in English, honestly. So it burns hot. So question is, can you even be able to reach to the plane itself without you yourself being in danger, right? Then in the hazmat situation, like we had in Costa Rica, we had that big UPS DHL flight crash. So now you're dealing with things that we have no idea what that plane is carrying.
Mm-hmm.
So chances if you can see it, Brad said if you can smell it, that means you're probably going to become a victim as well because we don't know what's going on. And the last thing I would add at that, remember that based on how big that plane is, your biggest hazard is going to be dealing with bodies, unfortunately, right? The emergencies we have had at the airport, per se, it's when planes take off, mostly by FAA, they take off with a lot of fuel. If they kerosene, thank you, kerosene, yeah, maftata, thank you, Dennis. But if they declare an emergency, they tend to dump as much fuel as possible in the air before they land. So plane can actually take off very heavy, but they don't land well when they're heavy, if that makes any sense. But then you have that, I think it's 500 feet converted into meters on how the point of no return. We see a lot of planes crash on that. And when they crash on that, with those many fuels, the survivability rate is usually not good because of the hazard of fuel. Does that kind of make sense, Mr. Barnabas? So life safety, incident stabilization, property conservation. Falls in the forest, you might have a bushfire after that. Falls at the airport, you might have life and other planes. So risk a lot to save a lot, risk little to what's already lost. And last word, treat airplane crashes just like a car crash, right? You do the same thing, just it's a different machine. You're just doing the same thing. Extrication, safety, protection, et cetera, et cetera. Thanks, Brad. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you. Thanks, Benson. That's very well said. There's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of variables. I'm glad Benson was on here because he is a crash fire rescue guy. So he can better say that better explain it than I can because that's his specialty. So appreciate it, Vincent. So there's a couple of questions on the chat here. First one, Harrison, when an LPG tanker overturns without catching fire, has a significant gas leak, what are the procedures to be followed? You're going to, first of all, like we talked about, we're going to secure that perimeter. That's the big thing. Depends on what your level of training is from there on out, as far as what you can do. If you are not trained to repair that valving, and it depends there again where the leak is coming from. If it's a valving issue where you have valving broken off, that's going to take a specialist to repair that valving. So you're going to have to call somebody in. So you're going to just make sure that that area is secure, and wait for somebody to come in. Sometimes with valving leaks, believe it or not, they will actually auto refrigerate themselves and they will stop leaking on their own depending on how fast they're leaking. But yeah, this just depends on your level of training and where the leak's coming from. But I wish I could tell you more than that. But there again, there are some variables to that. I had another. Had somebody else that posted a question up here. Stanley, he had a question on how do I contain and clean up a spill, and what are the guidelines for neutralizing or diluting spilled material? First of all, Harrison, did that answer your question? There again, that's pretty vague with my answer, but the best answer I can give you on the LPG tanker is secure the area and call in the specialist to repair the valving on that. Because that's going to take some specialty folks to fix that. Just make sure everybody's out of there. If you have monitoring equipment, monitor that perimeter and make sure that you don't have any vapor leaking out and getting outside your perimeter, and be prepared to expand that perimeter. That'd be the one other thing I could add to that. Anyway, Stanley, says, how do I contain and clean up a spill, and what are the guidelines for neutralizing or diluting spilled material? That is a fairly broad question. Depends on the material. You would have to be a little more specific. Look up what is spilled in your guidebook. Okay, first of all, and see what type of material you have. And secure your perimeter. That's going to be your first step. Usually neutralizing is going to be for an acid or a base as far as neutralizing. And that's a whole technical area in itself as far as neutralizing, depending on the type of acid or a base it is. Depends on what it is as to how much acid or base you add to neutralize it, depending on the type of material it is. As far as diluting spilled material, usually we don't see a lot of doing that as far as dilution. You can, depending on what it is, but usually we don't do a whole lot of that. Usually what you want to do if you can is to dike it. If you have a spill that's running off, dike it up and get a company to come and pick that up, and they'll usually pump it up and dispose of it properly. If you have a company have a spill that's running off, you want to, like I say, dike or dam and stop it and have somebody come and pick it up rather than trying to dilute. Does that answer your question, Stanley?
Yeah, sure, sir.
Okay. Like I said, some of these are a little vague as far as my answers, but like I said, it's a lot of it's product specific. The best answers I can give are to go, depending on the spill, is to go to your DOT guidebook first, and if you have more specific product guides, then to go to that. So, and a lot of it's going to depend on your training as well. At this level, at the awareness level, all I am talking about at the awareness level is just knowing that a hazmat's there and isolating it. Okay. At the symposium in Kenya, I taught at the tech level, which that teaches you how to do a lot more. This is just a real basic 1 hour version of identifying. So you guys are coming up with some good questions, though. Anything else?
It's like one last quick question. What distance should I stand when attending to a compressed liquefied gas fire?
Let me look. What distance should you stand?
If you're trying to fight the fire and, is when your mustache starts to burn, you're too close.
Oh, there you go. That's too close. That's a good test.
Really, that if you're trying to fight that fire, you're only going to be able to get to as close as your PPE allows you to, and
Yeah.
your stream reach of
As
your
you're
hose
comfortable.
and your water capacity. So far as your isolation distances, like he's been saying, you want to hit that guidebook to find your isolation distances.
Okay, your evacuation distance for an LPG fire. Evacuation for a large spill is a half mile, 800 meters. If you have a tank, isolate for 1,600 meters. The tank is involved on fire. You guys see how quickly I was able to look that up? I have the app on my phone.
I did drop that a link to the app in the chat as well.
Oh, good.
And we'll
Thank
post
you.
that in some of our WhatsApp groups. We'll post that later on today as well. At this point in time, I think we're going to wrap up the formal portion of our training. If you have some more
Yep.
questions or comments, stick around. We'll get to that with tea time. I want to thank Brad for taking the time to join us today. I know he's got some other training he's heading out to here soon.
Yeah.
So thanks for
hang around
spending
for a
the
little
morning
bit.
with us. Spending your morning with us, or afternoon, or whatever. And thank you to all of you all for attending the class and taking the time out of your schedules to join us to better your own skills as you serve your communities, and and to use the bundles that you've got to join us here today. It's much appreciated. We don't take that for granted. So thank you all. We've got plenty of available room here in our meetings. So if you know anyone else that may benefit from these trainings, please feel free to share that registration link or the link to our webpage, www.africafiremission.org, and lots of good resources on there. Place where you can register for the class. So share that link as well. Thank you all, and we hope to see you all again next week.